Please, can I fix it? Just for food. The words hung in the air, quiet but heavy. For a moment, the street went silent. Then, laughter cut through like knives. Food? One voice scoffed. You think you can fix a car like this? Another joined in, sharper, dripping with arrogance. Look at you. Ragged clothes, empty hands. You don't even belong near this machine. Their laughter grew, echoing against the polished metal of the luxury car, their suits gleaming beneath the sun. To them, he was nothing, a beggar reaching beyond his place. But the man did not flinch. His eyes stayed steady, his shoulders unshaken. They saw weakness. They saw desperation. Yet what stood before them was not just hunger, not just a man asking for scraps. Behind those quiet words was something they could never understand: skill, history, and a legend that time had not erased. And while they mocked, he whispered again, calm and certain, "Let me try." Their laughter grew sharper as he stepped closer to the hood. "Stop right there!" one of them barked, pointing. "You'll scratch it just by touching it." The other smirked, leaning back against the car. "Tell you what, fix this beauty and maybe we'll buy you a meal. Fail, and you crawl back to the gutter where you came from." The air crackled with arrogance, their mocking voices carrying across the street. To them, it was a game. A hungry man's pride traded for scraps of food. But when his hands brushed the metal, the laughter faded into uneasy silence. His fingers moved with certainty, with memory, tracing every line as though the car itself was speaking to him. One executive frowned. "Wait, he knows what he's doing?" The other shook his head, scoffing louder. "Impossible. He's just a beggar." But deep inside, doubt had already begun to rise. He crouched low, tools borrowed from the trunk glinting in his hands. With every twist, every precise movement, the sound of laughter around him weakened. The homeless man did not flinch, did not hesitate. His touch was confident, practiced, almost surgical. One of them tried to laugh again, forcing the words through clenched teeth. Look at him, acting like he's in a pit crew. But the joke fell flat. The other leaned closer, his smile fading as wires, bolts, and gears fell perfectly into place. "No, this isn't random," he whispered. He knows this engine." The man's focus never broke. Grease smudged his fingers, sweat traced his brow, but his eyes burned with memory, of speed, of victories, of glory long hidden. Every motion carried the weight of years behind a wheel, years that the world had forgotten. And then, the engine roared to life. The street fell silent. The engine's roar thundered through the quiet street, smooth, flawless, alive again under the hands of the man they called worthless. The two executives froze, their smug grins collapsing into disbelief. One finally stammered, That's impossible. No one touches this car and makes it run like that." The other narrowed his eyes, studying the man's every movement. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice sharp, almost desperate. But the homeless man didn't answer. He simply stood, wiping his hands on his torn shirt, eyes fixed on the machine as though seeing an old friend again. The power in that silence was louder than their mockery had ever been. For the first time, they weren't laughing. For the first time, they felt small, because this wasn't the work of a beggar. This was the hand of someone who knew cars better than anyone alive, someone they should have never doubted. The taller executive stepped closer, his voice unsteady now. "No homeless man, no beggar on the street could touch this engine and make it sing like that." The other one swallowed hard, his arrogance slipping into fear. "I've seen this precision before, back on the track, back when legends ruled the circuit." Their eyes shifted, unease replacing pride, as the man finally lifted his gaze. His stare was calm, steady, unbroken. For years they had laughed at the sight of him, a shadow in torn clothes, forgotten by the world. But now, standing in the glow of headlights, he seemed different. A silence stretched heavy between them. The roar of the engine wasn't just sound, it was history calling, a ghost of victories past. And suddenly, their laughter felt like a noose tightening around their own necks. The homeless man finally broke his silence. His voice was calm, but every word hit like a hammer. "You think I asked for food because I'm weak? No, I asked because I was hungry, not because I forgot who I am." The executives froze, their breath catching in their throats. He stepped forward, his shadow stretching beneath the headlights, his eyes burning with a fire they hadn't seen in years. "I've driven faster than your minds can imagine," he said slowly. I've crossed finish lines before the world could blink. They called me unstoppable. They called me a legend. And tonight, he nodded toward the purring engine. Alive under his hands, you've just seen why. Their faces drained of color. The man they mocked for scraps of food was no beggar. He was the very name they once cheered. The champion whose roar still echoed across racetracks. And now, they stood trembling before him. The executives staggered back, their voices breaking under the weight of truth. No, it can't be you, one whispered, his hands trembling. You disappeared years ago. They said you were gone. Finished. The man's lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile, not of pride, but of quiet defiance. I never disappeared. I was discarded, forgotten when the money ran dry, when fame faded. But legends don't die. They wait. The shorter executive dropped his arrogance first, his voice quivering. Please, we didn't know. We thought you were just another beggar. Their words hung heavy, drenched in shame. Just moments ago, they had mocked him, treating him like nothing. Now they bowed beneath the weight of his presence. Their pride shattered on the very street where they once laughed. The man said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence itself crushed them harder than any words could. At last the man spoke again, his tone steady, carrying the weight of every mile, every victory, every scar. You laughed because I asked for food. You mocked because of these torn clothes, but let me teach you something. He stepped closer, his gaze burning into theirs. A man's worth is never measured by the dust on his shoes, but by the fire in his soul. The executives dropped their heads, unable to meet his eyes. Every word struck like thunder, breaking through the shell of arrogance they had worn for years. I've slept on concrete, he continued, but I've also stood on podiums. I've tasted hunger, but I've also tasted glory. Respect, his voice deepened, echoing in the silence, is something you give to every soul. Because you never know when the person you mock is the very one who could change your life. The street was silent. Even the car seemed to listen. The executives fell to their knees, their polished shoes scraping against the pavement. Pride had abandoned them, leaving only desperation. Please, one stammered, his voice cracking, forgive us. We didn't know who you were. The other pressed his hands together, trembling. We mocked a legend. We mocked a man greater than we could ever hope to be. But the homeless man only shook his head, the faintest flicker of sorrow in his eyes. You didn't mock a legend, he said quietly. You mocked a human being. And that was your mistake. The words cut deeper than any shout could. They lowered their heads, ashamed, their arrogance shattered beyond repair. He turned from them, his steps slow, steady, carrying the weight of silence. For the first time, they weren't looking at a beggar. They were watching greatness walk away, leaving them small in their own shadow. He walked into the night, the engine's steady rumble fading behind him, but the echo of his words remained. The world had stripped him of wealth, of fame, of comfort. Yet none of it had broken the core of who he was. He was more than a racer, more than a legend. He was proof that greatness cannot be buried by circumstance. The executives stayed frozen on the pavement, their heads bowed, the taste of humiliation burning in their throats. They had mocked a man for food, blind to the truth standing before them. Now they would never forget the lesson carved into their souls: respect all, for even the lowest can rise higher than kings. As the night swallowed his silhouette, one truth thundered louder than the roar of any engine. Legends don't vanish. Legends don't beg. Legends endure whether in glory or in silence. And sometimes the greatest victory is not on the track, but in the hearts you forever change.